Dom. Hello, everybody. I am going to talk for a little bit about us. And I mean by that, the us that share this planet together, a planet that at the moment seems to be on fire. We seem to have created for ourselves a modernity that isn't kind to people and place. And the last time I saw the figure, I think we are 41.5 million people that are displaced and looking for a way home. And of course, we're still all struggling to understand what kind of a financial system we need to invent, and we're in this process that will not destroy or continue to destroy the ecology of the planet we call home. And the really sad thing about all that is, of course, we are all perpetrators in this, and we are all victims at the same time. And my talk is going to be about this idea of sacred, because I think that might be our way out, or a way out. And by the sacred, I don't mean it in the religious sense or even the spiritual sense. I mean it, something is sacred when it carries an essence that cannot and should not be separated from all the things that gave rise to its creation. And so, of course, culture and nature are sacred things. And they are, of course, essential to our survival. And not just our survival, they're essential to our ability to flourish and our ability to make meaning. And of course, they're essential to our ability to have a rich life. So that's where we're going to go in the next half hour or so. And here we go. I'm going to talk about all of these things from the lens of a particular place. It could be any place, it just happens to be the place that I know. And that place is called Fogo Island. This idea of community I want to poke at a bit. When I say community, I mean social community and natural community. I do not mean that you and I are in a community together because we both drive a Subaru. I mean it when we have a shared fate, we know we have a shared fate, F-A-T-E, and we conduct ourselves as if we have a shared fate. A man named E.F. Schumacher in the 1970s wrote a sentence that might be the most important sentence ever written. He said, every human being should get up in the morning, look at the world, and try to see it as whole, W-H-O-L-E, which means to see whatever it is you're looking at with a lens that sees how it's interconnected and joined to absolutely everything else. And so that will be how I get to sacred. Another man who unfortunately isn't with us anymore, Gil Chen Lim, coined this phrase, humanistic globalization. It's like, of course, globalization, we're not going to go backwards. But he called out for something called humanistic globalization. And this is where I think it gets really exciting, especially for us in this industry. He called for creating a global network of intensely local places. And of course we can do this. And us, more than anybody else, has the power to do this. Because as much power as we have to be destructive, and I think as an industry have been destructive, we can choose, each and every one of us, whether we're going to be a sort of global virus that goes around the planet flattening and making everything the same, or we can be like bumblebees that go around the planet, and what a privilege we have to do that, acting like noble, hardworking bumblebees that seek out all the beautiful flowers and make sure they're pollinated and make sure they get what they need to be exactly what they are, not to be like the flower over there. And I think that is our challenge. Reductionism. You cannot buy a book, I don't think, that talks about what that is. And I've never met a person that claims to be a reductionist. But reductionism is alive and well, and it is actually, I think, the ideological force that's present in the world that causes this destruction of the sacred. And reductionism is when you look at something and you see it in a narrower sense than it really is. So you look at a person, for example, instead of seeing a person as an entity that has hurts and joys and a past and dreams and a mother and all of that, you see a person as a consumer. You see a person as having a credit card. Or you look at a beautiful lake and you don't see the beautiful lake and the inherent value that it has to help us make meaning, you see an opportunity to develop it and make money. So be very aware of reductionism because it's usually silent, but beware, you'll feel it when it's present. Back to Schumacher, another two important sentences. Nature and culture are the two great garments of human life, and business and technology are the two great tools that can and should serve them. I think I'm going too fast on my slides. Now, those two sentences, maybe if I point it back here, it'll be better. I think I could actually stop talking now because I think it's all said. We still have something left of nature and culture, not as much as we had 50 years ago before we started into this kind of rampant modernity. What we have to figure out is how to get nature and culture to be master, not servant. So I'm going to talk about something called sacred capital. A book I would recommend is called Sacred Economics by a fellow named Charles Eisenstein. You should read it right away, I think. We talked about this at the beginning. It's something that carries the essence of something. Sacred capital, a frog is sacred. A disappearing language is sacred. And if we destroy these things, they can't be replaced, or at least not easily. Then there's something called money, which is hugely important, but not, Iggy Pop called it a huge unimportant detail, but it's not sacred. And of course, the times we are living in, money is backed really by growth. And money that's backed by growth can be fairly destructive. And the other thing about money is that it's generic. And it will cause us to monetize things so we can compare prices, for example. So I am 57 years old. I'm a business person. My career was in business. This, to me, is what I think we have to do more urgently than anything else, and I think we're kind of on the path to it. I think the spirit of this better relationship has actually arrived. We feel it in our bones. So this lens of Fogo Island, we have to start with place, because place is the most important thing. Human communities, human cultures are attached to place. And so the place I'm going to talk about is on the northeast coast of Canada. It's an island off an island in the Labrador Current, and here's Newfoundland and Fogo Island. European people settled there about 400 years ago, and Fogo Island is actually an island that's made up of 10 little communities, so it's a community of islands. Now, I think an island is a very convenient idea to think about a planet, because really a small island is a pretty darn good proxy for a small planet. Everything on a small island is a domestic event. So wouldn't the world be different if everything on the planet, we felt it? And so to give you a little sense of the people and the sacred capital that's on this island, all the things of the North Atlantic, a people that have been a fishing people, and so we're very good with building boats. We have 7 distinct seasons. Well, actually, my father always thought we had 16, and we were too lazy to count. We share the island with herds of caribou. The pack ice comes in the spring and brings with it seals. And after that, the icebergs come. Because we live in the Labrador Current, we know very well what's going on in the Arctic. We didn't need to read that the Northwest Passage has opened up because we see it on our doorstep. I'll give you a sense of, I'm going to talk about architecture and the importance of architecture. This is the vernacular architecture of Fogo Island. This is a fishing stage. I grew up this way. I'm an 8th generation Fogo Islander. I grew up feral. I can tell you exactly when the tide's going to come in and go out. And now I'm going to talk about fish. Good that Serge opened up with fish, because it's going to be a theme. This is a North Atlantic cod, not to be confused with the far inferior Pacific cod. This is how we make meaning in Newfoundland and on Fogo Island. And in fact, many cultures of the North Atlantic basin derive their livelihood, the structure of their societies, the structure of their lives from, and their richness from this fish, which used to be one of the biggest populations of fish on the entire planet. And the European people came to Newfoundland in 1600s to fish. And so that's how my family came. We fished like this, very small boats that we built ourselves. All the gear we made ourselves, essentially cut off from the mainland. So in my lifetime, we had no electricity, no running water, very few people had education. This is some of the fishing stages, and then this happened. So we now begin the industrialization of the fishery. It took 30 years from when the first one of these things appeared on our doorstep to the collapse of the inshore fishery. I was 8, and I lived through this. And everything we knew overnight was useless, and our culture seemed to have come to an end. This was very common. So what you have going on here is reductionism at its worst, because the people who run these ships, and it was every nation on earth, there are a lot of culprits in this, they weren't thinking about the adjacent communities, they certainly weren't thinking about the fish. They were thinking about return on capital. And so the government of the day really had little choice for these little communities but to move them out. And so when I see images of people now on the move, this of course resonates back to, didn't we learn anything yet? On Fogo Island, things didn't go that way. We did not resettle because of art. And if you don't have art in your life, really you're missing a huge opportunity to see and to know. In our case, the National Film Board of Canada came to Fogo Island, made 27 beautiful little films that's become called the Fogo process, that really helped us see what the reductionist government of the day didn't see, which was we had a lot to work with, despite the fact the fishery had collapsed. This is one of these films called The Children of Fogo Island. It's online if you just Google Fogo process, NFB. In this film, these kids are playing the embodied play, using all of their bodies, and they build this little house. And every time I see it, it hurts me to think, in our modernity, we actually deprive children of embodied play, which is actually a need, and instead we sell them video games. In any event, because of art, because of these films, we didn't resettle. We converted to a different fishery, so now we fish for crab and shrimp. It's a midshore fishery, so we have to go further offshore, which means the season starts earlier, we have to get out through the pack ice, but nonetheless, Fogo Islanders are nothing if not persistent. And so my own father couldn't make the adjustment to the midshore fishery because he couldn't read and write and he was too old. But he always made sure that we understood that fish didn't let us down. Something let us down. And so I went away to university and I studied business, and my career was in business because I wanted to understand what was the ideology, who in their right mind would catch the last fish. Everything I learned at business school can be summed up in a cauliflower. It is a beautiful fractal. It's just a pattern that repeats. Fogo Island is a little floret. There are big florets, small florets, but the important thing is they're all joined by the stem, which is the connective tissue. In 1968, the connective tissue became so self-serving, it deprived our little floret of what it needed to be healthy because the stem was optimizing for return on capital. And so all of us are a part of that stem. And I think one skill we all need to have is a kind of a literacy, a systems literacy, to think about everything we do in relation to the cauliflower and all of the florets. So then I moved home after my business career and technology career. I had more money than I needed to live a life. I have a very funny relationship with money. I never think it belongs to me. I think it belongs to all of us. I think it happens to be in my control. And so with my brothers, we wanted to do something for home. We still have a fishery. It's essential, but it's not sufficient. We obviously wanted to do something that had integrity. Integrity simply means that something is consistent and complete. And we wanted to do something that was original, and original simply means true to its origins. We set up a foundation, a charity called Shorefast. I am not that interested in charity because I actually haven't met any people that like to be the recipients of charity, but I'm very interested in business, and I'm really interested in how you can use philanthropic funds to invest in assets that can belong to a community, and I can be dead and gone, and the community can still be benefiting from these economic assets. So that really led us our thinking. And there's something called ABCD, asset-based community development. It's really a way of asking when you're thinking about what's the way forward. What do we know? What do we have? What do we love? What do we miss? And what can we do about it? So when we went through this for Fogo Island, we realized we are really good at hospitality, genetically and culturally predisposed to the love of a stranger, which is what hospitality really means. We were a little frightened of getting into the tourism world because I know you know, it hasn't always been kind to communities. It's a bit of a dance with the devil. And as one of my brothers said, isn't that just a monetization of the sacred? And you know, now we have to make up new words like authentic. You know, and does authentic just mean a better fake? And so anyway, we got ourselves past that because we decided not everybody does it that way. And it doesn't have to be done that way. And at this time, this is 10 years ago, there was something called Geo Tourism. I don't know why that phrase didn't hold on. It's such a perfect word, geotourism. And it really talks about the wholeness and the well-being of a community. So we decided to go in that direction. And never forget David Foster Wallace, who's also gone. He has this beautiful book with a little story about two young fish swimming along one morning. They meet an older fish coming the other way. And the older fish says, "Good morning, boys, how's the water?" And they swim on past, and then one young fish says to the other, "What's water?" And that's our human problem. We can't see the sacred that's right in front of us. So we decided as a foundation to do 4 things. We started something called Fogo Island Arts, which operates a residency program for visiting artists, contemporary artists, because art is a way of knowing. We built a little inn. We have a business fund that's modeled after the Grameen Bank. It's a micro-lending fund for people that want to run businesses or start businesses on Fogo Island. And we have a whole set of initiatives that have to do with a higher fidelity relationship with the ocean. These are the markers we steer by. Place itself is not a commodity. We need to be respectful of all of the human ways of knowing. This is Frank Dwyer. He lives in Tilting. He is a boat builder. He's a sealer. He's a fisherman. Frank's knowledge comes from an embodied relationship with the natural world. And by definition, it's multidisciplinary. And, the natural world, we need it now more than ever because it's the only antidote that I know to the flickering screen that we have all become so addicted to that's actually destroying our ability to focus. Life is a rhythm of opposites. It's the design. We have to work that way and think that way. Community is the basic building block of human life. Art is a way of knowing and a way of belonging. One of the things in the business world that I lived in for so long, business people don't like uncertainty, so we will make decisions sooner than we should. Art lets us hold on to the question long enough for the real better answers to emerge. And the power of design. We've been building little wooden houses on Fogo Island for 400 years, nobody much noticed. We invited designers to come. Architecture to me is a form of design. And same carpenters, same wood, different shapes. Now, one of the things for traditional communities is the river is wide between where we're standing and the modernity that keeps moving further away from us. And in some communities, it's so wide you can't even build a bridge. I think that there's a danger for traditional communities of becoming musealized. Nobody wants to live in a museum, and that's not going to last for long. And so design is just one of these lovely tools that we can use to help translate what we know and how we know it into something contemporary that can help connect us through time. And businesses need to be not just for profit, and I mean all businesses. I actually think that a business that operates just for profit won't survive anyway because we as consumers won't tolerate that for much longer. And you'll know you're a not just for profit business when, for example, you pay your people as much as you can possibly afford, not as little as you can get away with. And this whole idea of social business, which I think the world will be taken over by social business, that simply means asking and answering the question, how much profit should we make if we're doing the right things by people and planet? And that's that kind of holistic thinking. And of course, we were trying to figure out how to stitch ourselves into the world. I see the world as a quilt. All those little patches are all the communities that make up the world. So we built some studios. These are artists' workspaces made by our local people. We're really good at building things out of wood. They're all off the grid. We collect rainwater. They have composting toilets. And this critical thinking of art and these people who visit has already changed sort of the confidence that we have as a community. And one of our artists actually has just been nominated for the Turner Prize, which all fingers are crossed for her to win that. This is a writer's studio. It's set in a sacred place, and gently. All these studios sit kind of on tippy toes and trying to do the least in terms of their impact on the ground around them. This image was used by Apple when they launched their iPhone 5 150 years ago. Artists don't live in these studios. If you used to be 6,000 people, like we used to be, and now you're 2,706, you have houses that need love. And so we restored a lot of these homes that artists live in, and now you see the old and the new. That old building without the new one would make us sad for people that are gone and whose lives amounted to nothing. And the new building, without the old one, will be some young upstart architect's idea of beauty. Who cares? Together, you see time. And as human beings, we crave the presence of time in our lives. I mean, that's why suburbs are so destructive. It's not that they're the same, is you can't feel time. And I think great architecture helps us carry time. And then we built an inn. This inn is a Trojan horse for a set of ideas and a set of dreams. It just looks like an inn. It's actually like a ship in a way. It's like 300 feet long and 30 feet wide. Some luxury properties have charitable foundations. This charitable foundation has a luxury inn. And this idea of turning it on its head, it's an act of culture, this inn. And it's an economic asset that belongs to the community. I think we all know this. The world is suffering from a plague of sameness. All of the images that I've shown you are from Fogo Island, except this one is not. I put it up to show you what reductionism does. This was built by somebody focusing on payback period or return on capital. Our human brains must not be trusted, even by us, because our brains overfocus on things we can measure. And we can't measure joy and we can't measure beauty, so we tend not to optimize for it. But now we know. We will always need shops. I never agree with that Amazon guy. And so next time we have to build them, because this won't last more than 20 years, we can do better. We can do better for our communities. So the inn is an X because it carries that tension between the old and the new, between the private and the public, and between people from Fogo Island and people from away. And so let's make it a metaphor. We have 7 seasons. We try to be respectful to all of them. A little tour around the inn to just show you wholeness. We have a library that specializes in the region. We have an art gallery, of course we do. We have a cinema, which is a partnership with the National Film Board, which is a nod, to, of course, to our film history. And every ship has a prow, and ours happens to be a dining room. Now, I'm going to talk about economics for a bit, but don't be scared, it won't be long. Tim Jackson is a British economist who wrote a book called Prosperity Without Growth. He wrote many books. He's a brilliant man. I was particularly struck by this, about creating an economy of care, craft, and culture. So when we were starting to think about an inn, then we had to think about, well, what about chairs and tables and beds and all those things? We could have obviously have purchased them, but that would make no sense given that we were trying to grow another leg on the economy. So we have always made things for ourselves because we've never had shops. So that seemed like an easy thing to do. So we did. If any man, as they say, any man can build a house, but not any man can build a boat. And if you can build a boat, you can build anything. And so that's how we tackled all of the interiors. We invited designers from away, mostly European designers to come and do residencies. We paired them up with local artisans, and they were each given, this is Elaine Fortin, who was given a chair project, arguably one of the most direct relationships between a traditional object and a new object. As long as we have these chairs, we will not lose our punt building or our boat building technology. Consumerism is not that we love things. Consumerism is that when we don't love things, that's how come they end up in the landfill. And when we have something in our lives that we don't know where it came from, we don't know where the money went, we don't know who made it, it's a missed opportunity for community, because every object in your life carries the potential to knit you together with people over there, to knit you together over time, and to use your money to create something that brings joy and meaning and richness to your life. And so all of these objects, except for the bathtub, which was made in Montreal, made on Fogo Island, even the wallpaper was designed for the inn. I'll tell you a little hanger story. We had a rule, if we could make it ourselves, we would. If we had to buy it, of course we did. But we wouldn't buy from places that didn't have basic labor laws and basic environmental protection laws. Well, we couldn't find hangers. So we thought, well, that's okay. People on vacation probably don't need hangers. How much clothes are you going to bring to Fogo Island? And then we had pegs. And then we got a reservation for a wedding. We thought, oh, good God, they're going to be dresses. So we engaged a young woman from Seattle who helped us with hangers. We made them on the island. This is for your wedding gown. And now we're in the hanger business, it turns out. Never a plan to be in the hanger business. Was never a plan to be in the furniture business. We kind of backed ourselves into that. And so, but that's a good thing, because now all the people who made all these objects have continued employment, and we'll continue making things, so we won't lose our knowledge. The tagline for our furniture business is new ways with old things. I used to say to our chef, that's good for food too. He said, no, it's not. It makes it sound like we're using old things in the fridge. But we're going to talk about food for a minute. Oh, these two creatures live at the inn because animals have a way of knowing that humans don't have. And they make us better humans, in my experience. I don't know if you are as tired as I am of the whole celebrity chef thing. Food is an opportunity to express place. The best chefs are translators of place. And so we try and use food to showcase and to invest in the sacred of this North Atlantic region. We have 26 kinds of edible berries, for example. And our microlending fund has been very helpful to getting people growing again. We used to grow everything. Then when the ferry started running all the time, people bought from away. Now people are growing again. And so I'm going to tell you a little orange juice story. When we first opened, we served orange juice. Until one day, a woman on the island said, "It doesn't make any sense to me why you people up there are serving orange juice, because like, where does that come from? Aside from the fact that the whole orange juice industry can be dubious. We have all these berries," and her point was, if you ask them, those berries are perfectly willing to be juices. So you will not see images like this anymore. We don't serve orange juice anymore. 95% of the people who come to the inn love that. 5% don't. And for the 5% that don't, I think we need to make a charter of ethics or something for travelers to understand their power. I've always loved this expression: an acceptance of precariousness is a prerequisite to permanence. Okay, I'm almost at the end. How am I doing for time? I'm good. And in my lifetime, we got this food labeling, right? So you're looking at the cereal box in the morning and you think, good grief, maybe I shouldn't have a second bowl of this because, it's not all that good for me. You're deciding. You can decide because you have the information and it's right there in front of you. So with whatever energy I have left in my life, I want to cause this to happen. That everything we buy has a label: economic nutrition. So, you go to buy a blouse, it simply tells you, where did the money go? And so in the case of this chair, I can't see it with my glasses, but I think about 45% of what you might spend on that chair goes to labor. And underneath, it'll tell you where was that labor expended. So you can say by geography. And then you just go through all the materials. Now, if we were a straight regular business, as opposed to a 100% social business, that's fine too, this still applies. You put down profit. Profit is not a bad thing. It's a question of degree. And if you're happy to buy a blouse that has 500% profit in it, that's fine. It just gives you the information. I think if we can do this, we can get away from this world where, as business people, we put on our suits, we go to work, we cause all kinds of havoc, we come home, we change, we put on a ball gown, and we raise money to fix the things we cause during the day. I don't want to live in a world that you don't go out to any charity balls because you can then stay home in your pajamas. And I think this kind of knowledge about following the money will help us get there. Almost at the end. We are, each and every one of us, responsible for the ongoing creation of communities. It's everyday work. And as my father used to say, I don't care what you think, I don't care what you feel, only care what you do. Because it's only what you do that adds up to anything. So we are all responsible. What matters, as my dad says, is what you do. And the good news is that everything that everyone does matters. And to come back to us, I think what we do matters more because we have more power. And I think in the way we conduct ourselves, we can cause a focus on the sacred, a focus on the local, a focus on the specific that's going to remedy some of these challenges I talked about at the beginning, that's going to help all of us have more nourishment, more spiritual nourishment, and have richer lives. And a poem to end from a New Zealand poet. It's a very long poem, just one stanza, because it is about trying to walk upright. The art of walking upright is the art of using both feet. One is for holding on, and one is for reaching out. Thank you very much.